My love, if I could open your heart like a book, what would be the very first page you'd want me to read, and why does it matter so much to you? When you think about the very first moment you knew love was real, what memory comes to your mind, and how has it shaped the way you love me today? If I asked you to close your eyes and describe the exact feeling you get when you hear my voice, what words would you use that no one else has ever heard from you before? Do you remember the first time you looked at me and felt something shift inside your soul? And can you tell me what that moment whispered to your heart? When you think about the word home, do you see a place or do you see me? And what makes that vision feel safe and unshakable to you? If I could promise to hold only one part of your pain forever, so you never had to carry it again, which part would you hand over to me first? What is the dream you've hidden the longest? The one you've never dared to tell anyone? And can you trust me enough to breathe it into the light of my heart? When you're afraid or uncertain, what is the one thing I do that makes your fear melt away? And how can I do it more often so you never feel alone? If love were a language written only between us, what would be the first secret phrase you'd want me to learn? And what would it mean for our souls? When you imagine us years from now, gray-haired and still holding hands, what is the one promise you hope I've kept, even after all the seasons have passed? My love, if every scar on your heart could tell me its story, which one would you want me to listen to first? And what would it teach me about the tenderness you carry inside? When you look at me and see not only who I am, but who I'm becoming, what is the dream you silently hold for me? The dream you never say out loud but hope I grow into. If we had just one night where time stood still and the world disappeared, what conversation would you choose to have with me? And what secrets would you finally feel safe enough to share? Tell me, when the world feels too heavy, what memory of us gives you strength again? And how does it remind you that our love was written for eternity? If our souls could sit down and write a love letter to each other without our voices getting in the way, what words do you think my soul would whisper to yours that I've never said before? What do you think God saw in me that made him say, "This is the one for you"? And how do you feel knowing heaven itself chose our paths to collide? When you wake up beside me, what is the very first thought that enters your mind? And how does that thought shape the way you love me for the rest of the day? If we could paint our love on a canvas, which colors would you choose to represent us? And what story would that painting tell to anyone who gazes upon it? If love is a garden we are both tending, which flower do you see blooming between us right now? And which seed do you hope we plant next to keep our bond alive? When you look at my flaws, my mistakes, my fragile parts, what is it that makes you stay and love me even harder instead of walking away? If I held your hand right now and asked you to tell me the moment in your life when you felt most alive, would you trust me with that memory? And what would it reveal about your soul? When you look into my eyes, do you see only the person in front of you? Or do you also see the reflection of every prayer you ever whispered for true love? If we were given the power to travel back to the day before we first met, what advice would you give your past self about the kind of love that was about to arrive? What is the song that makes you think of me every single time you hear it? And what feelings rise in your heart when those lyrics play inside your mind? If the stars could speak, what do you imagine they would say about us when they watch us walk beneath them, hand in hand, as if the universe itself pauses to listen? When you think about forever, does it feel overwhelming or comforting? And what role do you see me playing in that endless story of your soul? If love had a taste, what flavor would our love carry for you? And why does that flavor remind you of sweetness that never fades away? What is the one question you've always been afraid to ask me because you feared the answer? And do you trust me enough to ask it now and let my honesty heal you? When silence falls between us, do you hear it as emptiness or as the language of souls speaking without words? And how does that silence make you feel safe? If tomorrow all the lights in the world went dark and we had only our voices to guide each other through the night, what words would you want me to say again and again until morning? If your soul could draw a map, Where on that map would it place me? And how close would I be to the treasure you've been searching for all your life? When you close your eyes at night, do you ever ask God to protect me in ways I will never see? And what prayer do you whisper most often for the one you love? If I could step into your dreams tonight, what scene would you create for us to live in together? And what feelings would you want me to remember when I wake up? When life tests us and the storm feels louder than our love, what memory of us do you cling to? The one that tells you we are stronger than anything against us. If your heart could speak directly to mine without your lips moving, what is the very first truth it would tell me? And why do you think it has been waiting so long to say it? When you think about the first time we laughed together, what details do you still remember? And why do you think that moment stayed carved into your heart? If love were a story, which chapter of ours would you read over and over again? And which page do you secretly hope will never end? What is the one part of my presence that makes you feel the safest? And how do you know deep inside that it cannot be replaced by anyone else? If every heartbeat had a word attached to it, what words do you think your heart whispers whenever you are near me? When you think about all the people you have met in your life, what do you believe makes our connection stand apart, like it was designed and not accidental? If your soul had a window, and I could look through it just once, what vision would you want me to see first? And what would it reveal about the love you carry for me? When you imagine us many years from now, what is the simplest daily routine you hope we still share? The one that feels ordinary but is actually sacred to you. If pain has ever tried to teach you to close your heart, what was the exact moment you decided to open it again for me? And what gave you that courage? What do you think is the most beautiful gift you have ever given me that had nothing to do with objects, but everything to do with your heart? If I asked you to tell me about the moment you realized I was not just someone you cared about, but the one your soul had been searching for, could you describe it to me in detail? When you dream of building a future with me, what does the home in your heart look like? And how does love fill its walls? If tomorrow we lost everything we owned but still had each other, what would you hold on to most tightly to remind you that our love is still enough? What is the one part of yourself you feel most afraid to show the world? And why do you feel safe enough to let me see it without fear of judgment? When you think about God's hand in our connection, what do you believe He wanted us to learn from each other that no one else could ever teach? If our love were a melody, what kind of song would it be? Soft and gentle like a lullaby, or powerful and endless like an anthem of eternity? When you think about all the promises you have ever made, which promise to me feels the most sacred, and why does it carry so much weight in your soul? If tomorrow you could write me a letter that I would keep forever, what would be the very first line? And what truth would you want me to never forget? When we are apart, what small detail of me lingers most in your mind? The detail that feels like an invisible thread pulling you back to me. If our love had a season, would it be spring filled with new beginnings, summer glowing with warmth, autumn rich with change, or winter holding quiet strength? And why do you choose that season? What do you think is the strongest bridge we have built together, the one that makes you believe no distance or challenge could ever break us? When you imagine us walking through difficult times, what is the one thing about me that makes you sure I will always choose to walk beside you? If you could give me one word that describes how your soul feels when you are with me, what would that word be? And why does it fit better than any other? What is the memory of us that you hold closest to your chest, the one you replay in your mind when you need comfort, peace, or courage? If tomorrow God asked you why you loved me, what would be the very first reason that would rise from your heart without hesitation? When you look at my flaws, my mistakes, and my imperfections, what is it that makes you love me even deeper instead of turning away? If time could stop right now and freeze one moment between us forever, which moment would you choose, and why does it carry eternity inside it? When you pray for our future, what do you ask heaven to protect most? And what is the vision you hope never fades away from us? If you could describe the way your heart feels when I whisper your name, What picture would you paint for me so I could understand your emotions more deeply? What is the most surprising way our love has changed you, the way you never expected, but now you cannot imagine living without? When you think of forever, do you see it as something distant and unreachable, or do you see it already beginning here with us right now? My love, if I could sit with your soul in complete silence, what question would it ask me first? And why does that question feel so heavy inside your heart? When you think about the very first moment you saw me, do you remember what you felt? And how do you think that moment prepared you for everything we share now? If love were a road, do you see me as a traveler walking beside you? Or do you see me as the destination you've been searching for all your life? When you close your eyes at night, what is the one image of me that always comes back, even when the world has tried to distract you from love? If you could tell me one truth you've never said out loud, a truth you've hidden from the world, what would it be? And why does my heart feel like the safest place to hold it? When we argue or misunderstand each other, what is the thought that still makes you choose me? And when has it proved to you about the strength of our love? If we were stripped of everything, money, possessions, even words, what is the one thing about me that would still make you say, I can't live without you? What is the memory of your childhood that shaped the way you love? And how does that memory whisper into the way you treat me now? If I could reach into your fears and remove just one forever, which one would you hand over to me? And how would your life feel lighter without it? When you look at me, do you see someone who matches your soul, or someone who challenges you to become more than you thought you could ever be? If we were both standing at the edge of the unknown, would you still take my hand? And what gives you the courage to believe I would never let it go? When you hear the word forever, what do you picture? And how do you see me inside that picture? If your heart could paint, what colors would it use to describe our love? And what masterpiece would it create that no one else would understand but us? What is the prayer you whispered when you were alone, the one you thought no one heard? And how do you feel knowing that prayer brought me to you? If I disappeared for a season and returned one day, what is the first question you would ask me? And what answer would make you stay? When you imagine the happiest version of yourself, what am I doing in that vision that makes your joy complete? If you could relive one day with me over and over again, which day would you choose? And why does that day stand out from all the rest? What is the softest part of your heart that you've only let me touch? And how did you know I was safe enough to carry it? When you're tired of the world, what is it about my presence that feels like rest? And how can I offer it to you more often? If love had a fragrance, what would ours smell like? And what memory would that scent bring back every time you breathe it in? When you imagine our love written as poetry, what line do you hope will be remembered most? And why does that line capture our story so well? If your soul could only keep one memory of me for eternity, which one would it be? And why would it be enough? When I hold your hand, what does it tell you without words? And how does that silent language comfort you in ways no sentence ever could? If I were to ask you to describe the way my love has changed you, what would you say first? And why does that change matter most? What do you see in my eyes that no one else notices? And how does that truth make you feel at home with me? When you think about us in the future, what is the one tradition or habit you never want us to lose, no matter how life changes? If you could give me one gift that cannot be wrapped or bought, what would it be? And how would it reveal the depth of your love for me? When you stand before God in your prayers, what is the one thing about me you thank Him for again and again? If you could ask me one question and know I would answer with complete honesty, what question would you dare to ask? And what answer are you hoping for? When you imagine the safest place on earth, does my embrace appear in that vision? And why does it bring you peace? If tomorrow were our last day together, what would you want me to know beyond every doubt? And how would you show it to me? When you think about the story of your life, where does our chapter begin? And how do you believe it will be remembered? If you could write a vow to me right now, what would it promise? And why does that promise feel unbreakable? When we sit in silence, what do you hear that I cannot? And how does it remind you that love is more than words? If I asked you to describe my soul, not my body or my face, what would you say? And how would you explain it to someone who has never felt love like ours? When you think of eternity, do you fear it? Or do you see it as another chance to keep choosing me, again and again, without end? If love could heal every wound, which wound would you ask our love to heal first, and why does it still ache? When you look at me on my worst days, what convinces you to still stay? And how do you find beauty in the places I only see brokenness? If we could sit together at the edge of time and watch the world fade away, what is the last thing you would want to say to me before eternity begins? When you imagine the first time our souls recognized each other, what did it feel like, and why does that recognition still echo inside you today? If I asked you to tell me the exact moment you felt safe to love me fully, could you describe it, and how did it change the way you see yourself? When you think about the word home, do you see a place or do you see me? And what is it about my presence that makes it feel like safety itself? If every memory of us had a sound, which sound would play the loudest? And what emotion would it bring rushing back to your heart? When you imagine a world without me, what is the first thing you would miss? And how does it remind you that we are meant to be together? If love could speak, what do you think ours would say? And how would it make you feel understood in ways words never could? When you hold my hand, what is the story it tells you? And how do you carry that story in your heart through every day? If we could travel to any moment in our past together, which moment would you choose to relive? And why does it matter more than all the others? When you think about the future we are building, what is the dream you hold closest to your chest, the one you are afraid to share with anyone else? If I could know every fear you've ever had about love, which one would you let me erase first? And how would it change the way you see us? When you look at me, what is the one thing about me that you think no one else has ever truly noticed? And why does it matter to you that I see it? If our souls could communicate without words, what message would you send to mine right now? And how would it make me feel connected to you? When you imagine a lifetime together, what small daily moments do you treasure the most? The ones that make all the hardships worthwhile. If I could hold every tear you've ever cried, which one would you let me carry for you? And how would it lighten the weight on your heart? When you think about my smile, what does it awaken in you? And why do you feel it reaches parts of you no one else can touch? If we could make a promise that lasts beyond life, what promise would you choose? And how would you honor it every day? When you imagine us growing old together, what is the one thing you hope never changes, no matter how much time passes? If I could hear your thoughts for just 1 hour, which thought would you want me to hear first? And why is it so important to you? When you feel afraid or unsure, what is the image of me that gives you courage? And how does it make your heart feel steady again? If our love were a language only we understood, what phrase would you teach me first? And what would it mean for our connection? When you think about all the love you have ever given, what makes the love you share with me different? And why does it feel so essential? If we could create a world together, what would it look like? And how would our love shape every corner of it? When you hear my voice after a long day, what is the first feeling that rises inside you? And why does it feel like home? If you could show me your inner world, the one no one else sees, which part would you reveal first? And how would it make our bond stronger? When you think about the way our souls met, do you see it as destiny, chance, or something divine? And why does that thought bring peace to your heart? If I could take you back to the first day you knew you loved me, what would you tell your past self about how our love would grow? When you imagine us in moments of silence, what is it that we feel without saying a single word? And how does it speak louder than any conversation? If I asked you to describe the way your heart beats for me, what story would it tell? And how would it reveal the depth of your devotion? When you think about trust, What is the one thing I do that makes you feel completely safe? And why does that matter more than anything else? If our love were a river, what would it carry along its current? And how would it shape the lands it touches? When you see me laughing, what is the feeling that rises in your chest? And why does it make you want to protect that joy forever? If we could capture every shared moment and turn it into a star in the sky, which moments would shine the brightest? And why would they be eternal? When you imagine us apart for a season, what memory do you hold on to? And how does it give you strength until we reunite? If our love could heal the world, which wounds would it mend first? And why do you believe it has the power to do so? When you feel overwhelmed, what is the one thing about me that makes the world feel smaller, lighter, and kinder? If I could know every unspoken desire you have for us, which one would you let me fulfill first? And how would it bring joy to your soul? When you think about the first time our eyes met, what did you feel in that instant? And how does it still echo in your heart every day? If I asked you to tell me the one thing about me that makes you feel alive, what would it be? And how does it touch the deepest parts of your soul? When you imagine our love as a light, what does it illuminate in your life? And why does that brightness make everything else fade away? If I could hold your fears for just one night, which one would you hand over first? And how would it change the way you face tomorrow? When you feel uncertain about the world, what is the memory of us that grounds you? And how does it remind you that love is always stronger than doubt? If our love could speak in a language no one else understands, what would it say right now? And how would it make you feel more connected to me? When you picture the happiest version of yourself, what am I doing in that vision? And why does my presence complete the picture? If I could erase every moment you've ever felt alone, which memory would you let me take away first? And how would it leave room for joy instead? When you imagine us walking hand in hand through life's challenges, what do you see us overcoming together? And what does that reveal about the strength of our bond? If our souls could meet before we even knew each other, what would you tell me about the journey that led us to this moment? When you think of the word trust, what do you see me doing that makes you believe in us without hesitation? And how does it make your heart feel safe? If I asked you to describe the way your heart beats for me, what story would it tell? And how would it reveal the depth of your devotion? When you imagine a life without love, how do you see me appearing in your dreams? And what does that say about how essential we are to each other? If we could capture every moment we've shared and turn it into a painting, which memory would be the brightest color? And why does it shine so vividly? When you close your eyes and think of me, what is the first feeling that rises? And how does it make your day better, even when everything else is hard? If I could hear every thought you've had about our future, which one would surprise me most? And how would it make me love you even more? When you imagine our love as a river, what currents would carry us forward? And what obstacles would it overcome to stay strong? If I asked you to tell me the one thing you've never shared with anyone else about how I make you feel, what would it be? And why do you keep it secret? When you think about every challenge we've faced, what is the moment that made you realize our love could survive anything? And how does it inspire you now? If I could step into your heart and see the parts you hide from the world, which part would you let me explore first? And how would it make us closer? When you imagine our hands entwined forever, what does that gesture mean to you beyond touch? And why is it sacred in your heart? If I could know every unspoken desire you have for us, which one would you want me to fulfill first? And how would it bring joy to your soul? When you think about the first time you felt complete with me, what memory stands out? And how does it remind you that we were always meant to find each other? If love could heal all wounds, which part of your heart would you let me mend first? And how would it change the way you feel about life? When you imagine telling our story to someone who doesn't understand, what is the one truth you hope they grasp? And why is it so important? If I could step into your dreams tonight, which dream would you want me to witness first? And what does it reveal about how you truly feel for me? When you feel scared or alone, what image of me brings you the most comfort? And why does it make the fear fade? If our love were a song, what melody would it carry? And what lyrics would perfectly describe everything we share? When you think about every smile we've exchanged, which one do you treasure most? And why does it stay with you even in hard times? If I could ask your heart a question and get an honest answer, what question would you hope I ask? And what answer would you give that you've never shared? When you imagine us old and gray, still holding hands, what moment from our past do you hope we remember first? And why does it matter the most? If I could know every unspoken wish you have for us, which one would you let me fulfill first? And how would it deepen the love we share? When you close your eyes and think of the first time we touched, what do you remember most? And how does that memory make your heart race even now? If I asked you to describe the way your soul feels around me, what words would you use? And how would it make me understand the depth of your love? When you imagine a future where everything we've dreamed of comes true, what is the first thing you see? And why does it feel like destiny? If our love could whisper to the universe, what would it say? And how would it make the stars recognize the bond we share? When you think about the most vulnerable parts of yourself, which part have you allowed me to hold? And why does it feel safe in my hands? If I could hear every heartbeat you've ever felt for me, which one would make me cry first? And why does it carry so much meaning? When you imagine us laughing together for the rest of our lives, what moment do you hope repeats again and again? And how does it make your soul sing? When you think about every touch we've shared, which one do you remember most vividly? And why does it still make your heart flutter? If I asked you to describe how your life changed the moment you first knew you loved me, what would you say? And how does it feel every time you think of it? When you imagine us building a life together, what small daily rituals do you hope never fade? The ones that make love feel alive in ordinary moments. If I could step into your heart and see every secret longing, which longing would you let me witness first? And how would it make us closer? When you think about the first time our souls felt connected, what did it feel like? And why do you think it was different from any other connection you've ever had? If love were a language only we could speak, what phrase would you teach me first? And what hidden meaning would it carry? When you imagine our future, what is the one challenge you hope we face together? And how do you see us overcoming it as a team? If I could know every dream you've ever had for us, which dream would you want me to make a reality first? And why does it matter most to you? When you close your eyes and picture my embrace, what does it feel like beyond touch? And why does it make everything else fade away? If I asked your soul to write a letter to mine, what would it say? And how would it reveal the depths of your love that words cannot express? When you think about every tear we've wiped from each other's eyes, which moment stands out the most? And why does it still linger in your memory? If we could capture our love in a single image, what would it be? And how would it tell the story of everything we've shared? When you imagine a lifetime together, what do you see as the moments that will define us? And why are they more important than anything else? If I could hear every unspoken thought you've had about me, which one would move me the most? And how would it deepen my understanding of your heart? When you feel uncertain about the future, what memory of us reminds you that love is stronger than fear? And how does it give you courage? If our love could heal every wound you've ever carried, which one would you let go first? And how would it change the way you feel about yourself? When you imagine us growing old, still side by side, what is the one thing you hope never changes? And why does it feel sacred in your heart? If I asked you to describe the way your soul feels when it's near mine, what words would you choose? And how would it make me understand the depth of your devotion? When you think about every promise we've made, which one feels the most essential? And why does it hold more meaning than all the others? If I could step into your dreams and live them with you, which dream would you want me to enter first? And how would it show me your truest desires? When you imagine us facing life's storms together, what is the one strength of ours that you rely on most, and why does it reassure you? If I could capture every heartbeat you've ever felt for me, which one would you hope I remember first, and what does it reveal about your love? When you think about every smile we've shared, which one do you replay in your mind most often, and why does it make your heart feel full? If our love were a flame, what would it light up in your life, and how would it guide us through darkness without fear? When you picture us walking hand in hand through every season, which season feels the most sacred to you, and why does it carry such meaning? If I could hear the one unspoken wish you have for us right now, which wish would it be, and how would fulfilling it change everything? When you imagine our souls intertwined for eternity, what does that vision feel like, and why does it make every moment apart feel temporary? If I asked you to tell me the one thing about me that makes your heart ache in the sweetest way, what would it be, and why does it touch you so deeply? When you think about the first time we laughed together until our hearts ached, what do you remember most, and why does it still make you smile? If love could speak through touch, what message does your hand send me every time it meets mine, and how do you know I feel it too? When you imagine our future together, what is the one adventure you are most eager to experience, and how do you see us creating memories that last forever? If I could hear every prayer you've ever whispered for us, which one would move me most, and why does it show the strength of you? My love, as you have walked through these questions, as your heart has opened to every reflection, every feeling, every memory, know that this is not just a moment, it is a sacred journey, a path that connects you to the deepest parts of your soul. Every question you asked, every thought you pondered, every emotion that stirred within you is a testament to the love that exists not only between two people, but within the universe itself. You have opened doors to understanding, not just of your soulmate, but of yourself. And in that space, you may find clarity that feels like sunlight streaming into every corner of your being. Know that the answers do not have to come all at once. Some truths will reveal themselves gently, softly, over time, like the petals of a flower slowly unfurling to the warmth of the sun. Your heart is a compass, and each question you have asked is a star guiding you closer to the true essence of connection. Every beat of your heart carries wisdom that only you can translate, and in that wisdom lives the clarity of love. When you ask these questions, when you reach for understanding, you are not only seeking your soulmate, you are seeking yourself. You are seeking the parts of you that have been waiting to love fully, openly, and without hesitation. Every pause, every silence, every thought that lingers after a question has been asked is a sacred space. Do not rush it. Let it breathe. Let it grow. Let it teach you patience and presence, because love itself is patient and present. Feel gratitude for every memory, every shared smile, every moment of connection, because even the smallest moments carry infinite meaning. They are the threads that weave the tapestry of your love story. Know that the universe is listening. Every question you have asked, every feeling you have expressed, has not gone unnoticed. The stars, the wind, the quiet spaces between moments, they all bear witness to your heart's courage. Your journey does not end here. It is only the beginning. Every insight you gain, every revelation that touches your soul, becomes a stepping stone to a deeper, more profound love. Take these questions with you. Let them guide your conversations. Let them awaken your curiosity. Let them invite your soulmate into a space of trust, intimacy, and vulnerability. Even if you do not receive immediate answers, even if the silence stretches long, know that love is always listening, always responding, and always present in ways you may not yet see. You are exactly where you need to be. Your heart knows this truth. And every beat, every thought, every question you ask is a signal that you are ready for the fullness of connection. Remember, love is not just about finding someone who completes you. It is about finding someone who amplifies the light that already exists within you. And these questions are your key to unlocking that light, for both yourself and your soulmate. Take a deep breath. Let gratitude flow through you. Feel the weight of your courage, the depth of your longing, and the quiet strength that resides in your heart. As you move forward, let each question become a bridge between souls. Let each pause become an invitation to understanding. Let each reflection become a space of growth. Know that the journey you are on is sacred. The questions you have asked, the thoughts you have pondered, the feelings you have felt, they are all part of a divine plan that is unfolding perfectly, in its own time. Your love story is not ordinary. It is not fleeting. It is eternal, written in the stars, etched into the fabric of your soul, and witnessed by the universe itself. As you step into the next chapter, carry these truths with you, that love is patient, love is kind, love is fearless, and love is transformative. You are worthy of every moment of joy, every whisper of connection, every sacred glance that reminds you that your hearts were meant to meet. When you speak these questions aloud, let your voice be gentle, let your intent be pure, and let your soul be fully present, because it is in presence that love speaks the loudest. Every answer you receive, whether through words, actions, or silence, is a gift. Treat it as such. Let it guide you, nurture you, and remind you that love is always moving, always alive, always sacred.